Okay, we're going to do a talk today about sound quality. This particular Airstream shipped with a brand of essentially car audio called Clarion. So this is the unit right here. And this is one of the older removable style faceplates, kind of an anti-theft device from, what would you say, the 90s. So one of the problems we've been having is this Airstream is now about 3 years old, and we'll tow and we'll get it into the trailer after the tow, and the faceplate will be popped off. And secondly, another problem we're having is the unit is beginning to malfunction and randomly start going into kind of a scan mode. And so in the middle of a movie, it switches over to static. So it's about time in that regard, since the unit's malfunctioning anyway, to replace it. But also I've had some, a little bit of dissatisfaction with the quality of the audio we get from the system. So you can see we have a couple of speakers underneath here, which is primarily where we sit when we're recreating, so to speak. So Clarion stuff here. And there's a couple more in the other part of the trailer. And so the problem with the system, first of all, is that I hate the speakers. I've been a bit of an audiophile in the rest of my life when I'm not Airstreaming, and Clarion it's just not cutting it for me. And the problem is fundamentally power. Airstream, this unit needs to function on 12 volts when it's off the grid, and so they've designed a very low wattage system to run the stereo. There's a subwoofer down there. There's 4 speakers, and so I've been meaning to redo this system for a number of years. The malfunctioning head unit there finally kind of pushed me into it. More custom work. So RVs, cars, trucks.
We'll try anything we want.
Hey everybody, this is Bill from Unique Car Audio.
Hey, how you doing?
And we're going to do a little bit of a walkthrough on our options for retrofitting the Airstream for better sound.
Okay, come on. All right, so what we're going to start with is going to be the JL Audio C3 speakers here. This is actually going to be a very versatile speaker for us. In our application, I'm going to actually take our tweeters, mount them into the middle, and make it a coaxial mount with a component performance.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Beautiful.
If we had an application where we had separate tweeters, we could actually take and separate those tweeters.
Gotcha.
In this spot, we don't. Let's say we were going to upgrade the truck. You could do that in your truck and be able to use those spots.
Okay.
But the biggest reason that I want to be able to do this is because these are actually going to be able to utilize an amplifier that we'll wire into it to be able to boost the power.
Beautiful.
So now we're going to take it from 18 watts per channel to 75 watts per channel, along with having a full range sound now coming out of a stereo. I'm now going to have an amplifier that's going to have a high pass and a low pass filter, so that I can then determine what sound I want going to what speaker. So the days of getting mumbled bass coming out of my mids are now a thing of the past.
So for our viewers, high pass only lets the higher frequencies through, is that right?
Correct.
So,
and low pass only allows the lower frequencies.
Okay, so you send your high to your mids and tweeter.
And then of course process everything for lower bass down to my subwoofer.
Gotcha, okay.
And of course in that lower cabinet, I'll end up getting a small little 10-inch subwoofer down in there.
Beautiful.
I'm gonna get you a 700 watt 5-channel amp. So we're gonna efficiently use 1 amp.
Amp, okay.
Power the whole
So
cabinet.
5 channels, 1 amplifier. Beautiful.
Breakdown on that, just so everybody knows, is going to end up being 75 watts by 4 channels. So we're going to have 75 watts per speaker for the fronts. The 2 speakers that are in the ceiling back there, 75 watts each. So really good power. And then I'm going to end up having 300 watts of control on that sub.
On the subs, 600 total. That's So
it'll be really nice.
Right on.
Now, really quick on the stereo, I'm just going to make this really simple. I believe that last week we were talking that we didn't need anything super elaborate.
that's
with
correct.
it.
I think wasn't the driving factor, as I recall, almost nobody makes a head anymore that takes analog aux, right? So, okay.
Yes. So it's a matter of actually trying to find something with an auxiliary.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
I believe. I'm trying to remember where we actually came to on that.
We came up to the JVC that hasn't quite shipped yet.
That's what it
Right,
is. Okay, so
right.
that's going to be the 7 series or
Okay.
the Mechless, because I think we were going to do one without a CD or DVD.
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes,
okay, so
and
that's gonna be the 7 series.
no GPS or anything. But
Correct.
Okay.
This is actually going to be, I believe, last year's version of this unit here. So let me go ahead and just kind of power it on so
Okay.
everybody can see it
We'll
here.
get a little bit of video here. So for our viewers, because I already have a Blu-ray player and satellite, and this unit will accept Bluetooth and a USB port, right?
Yes.
There was no reason for a CD. It's just terribly silly, right? And
It's extra parts and
right.
pieces that are just never used anymore. Most people put single disc in and then forget about it. And
Right.
a couple years later, they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that CD." So, but it's going to be a very user-friendly unit. And you got your volume control right here. That
you
can
do the volume by twirling it. That's
Uh-huh.
cool. Do you see this? That's cool.
There's also a volume right there if you really need to have the buttons to be able to do it.
Gotcha.
Of course, everything's going to be all fully touchscreen.
Beautiful.
When you want to be able to
The Bluetooth.
audio.
Okay.
So of course, when you end up
Right.
having your phone paired with it, of course, everything will end up coming right up through here.
Beautiful.
But it's a very clean screen. We will end up doubling the size of that.
So Bill's going to do a walkthrough for us on our JL 5-channel amp.
So I apologize. It's a little dirty here, one we pulled out of another application, but it's a similar amp that we'll be end up
Okay.
putting in there. What's nice on this amplifier here is that on an installation, all my connections are going to be on one side. A lot of the other manufacturers that are out there, you end up having some connections on this side, some connections
okay.
on this side.
Okay.
It makes the install just very sloppy. We're, again, kind of a stickler on aesthetics. So I like it here. All my connections come in one side. I take this front panel off here. All my controls are up under here.
Oh, nice.
It's hard set controls, so even if battery or power changes, you don't have to go in and
No
reset.
software changes, gotcha.
So,
Okay.
and once this is set, my customers never ever have to worry about doing anything on here other than going up and enjoying that volume.
Fantastic.
And turning the volume
Okay.
up, changing the source, whatever the case.
Tight fit.
I don't want to run wires in here. if I don't have to.
Yeah,
I'm kind of
absolutely.
trusting how powerful.
There's no power. Where's the batteries at?
All right. You guys can see there's a lot more going on with these new speakers than the old Clarions here. Hi everybody. So we're here at the Airstream spaceport, which otherwise known as Fred's house. So the Airstream has just finished having her retrofit, and besides putting the satellite dish on the Airstream, I think this is the next biggest thing I've ever had done to it, and I'm just tickled pink. So you saw in our intro sequence that we took the Airstream down to Gilbert, Arizona, and had a nice stereo system put in. And so we're going to start on the outside here and give you a walkthrough of all the pieces that make this work. And we will attempt to put up for you the appropriate overlays and graphics to show you the part numbers of the components that made up this sound system and help you understand what kind of power it took and how it was wired. So at the beginning, we're going to start with power. So power in the Airstream for the sound system is 12 volts. And so 12 volts begins in an Airstream up here, the battery box. And while Fred has got the camera there, I'm going to point. So we have a new terminal right here. That is an 80 amp fuse. So to remind our viewers, if you want to work out wattage, we put a 1,000 watt system in. So 80 times 12 is just a shade under 1,000. So this is the new lug that feeds our super power hungry sound system. And I will come back around now and show you this braid that comes around. This is a new braid that brings an additional 12 volt 80 amp line into the interior of the Airstream. And the braiding gives it a nice environmental sealing so that the UV doesn't crack the wiring or anything. So this is where power for the entire system begins. The reason it was wired this way is because the Airstream has a whole nother 12 volt distribution system, a bus inside, but it is much too low power. So we had to go right to the source. And let's go see what's going on inside the Airstream now. On the inside of the Airstream, the most interesting work that went on here is we have a new JVC head unit. This is a touchscreen based system. You can see it's double height. Maybe a lesson in unintended consequences.
And we are USAA members for life. USAA.
So I think this is very cool. That's how you control the volume. Nice gesture. Little rule of unintended consequences though is this is really a car stereo, so it gives you the warning about operating it in a moving vehicle, which makes me crazy.
Especially for a car stereo
It's just
that is meant to be moving.
right, like it forces you to interact with it. So that's amazing. But so for our viewers, as I mentioned, we'll put up all the part numbers. The head unit here it doesn't do any of the actual heavy lifting. The head unit, what it gives you access to is like there's Bluetooth connectivity, Spotify, a few apps. You can do phone stuff with it. The primary objective that I had when I bought this unit was this little guy, the AVN. That is an analog input, which is somewhat rare these days because we want the head unit to interface with the analog audio output from our HDMI switch so that this can broadcast beautiful quality sound for the satellite and for Blu-ray. So the head unit, the reason it doesn't do any heavy lifting is that's not where power is managed. This just does all the electronics, brings in the signal. So somehow you have to get information distributed to your speakers. And most people understand that that involves an amplifier. So what they did is the head unit is here. The amplifier is under here, which we will show in a minute. How do you connect these two? So the way that you connect them is they've brought in a nice little piece of conduit here, which is hidden quite nicely, I think. It looks, matches the Airstream, sits behind the curtain. This conduit brings in, they call it a 5-wire. So it's enough signal to run 4 speakers in a sub. So it's 4 plus 1, the 5 wires. So we come from the head unit down through that conduit and then finally into the workings of the trailer. And so the workings go like this. We have, you can see there's a nice heavy duty wire coming off the battery, comes into this amplifier over here. You can see all those little bitty wires, the green one, the gray one, the purple one. That's the 5-wire stuff. And then outgoing are these braided wires. Those go and pump out to the speakers. And then we have one that's driving the sub. And on the far left, we have power. Huge amounts of it, 1,000 watts. And you can see, I thought that they just absolutely killed the quality here. You can see they put it on a nice little backboard. It's color matched and stylistically similar to the Airstream. You just don't see this kind of quality. I'm so thrilled with the quality, and they even put their little emblem on it. And the amp itself is the JL Audio 5-channel amp. that is also their marine version. And the marine version it offers a little bit of resistance to moisture and environment. So we decided to go with the more robust version. And there's also enough wiring, although you can't see it right now. There's enough wiring in here that you can pull this unit off of that backboard and pull it close up here so you can work on it. So from the head unit, the JVC, we have the wires coming down, matching up with this JL Audio amplifier. The amplifier is pulling about 1,000 watts at maximum directly from the batteries. I should point out that they also did a really nice thing. This trailer comes with what's called a use store switch. And that switch, when it's in the store position, cuts off 12 volts to everything in the trailer, I believe, except for the smoke alarms. And so they've also wired it up so that we're on the side of the use side of that switch. So when you put it into store, this new wiring is not consuming any additional power. So we have the amplifier under here. The amplifier then is hooked up to 5 speakers. So the first one is a giant 12-inch thumping subwoofer, and you can see that they've mounted it up here, pointing. The reason the subwoofer is actually pointing at this backboard is it gives the bass something to reflect off of. So this is one of the speakers, and boy does it sound good. The other speakers are 2 that have been mounted up behind the couch here. And the interesting thing about these speakers is they are coaxially mounted. So there's for people who aren't really into audio, in audio you can think of like there's high, medium, and low frequencies. So these are called your mids. So these would normally drive the mid-range sound. The problem is if you've ever listened to a mid just by itself and you're trying to hear human voices, you'll hear mumble, mumble, there. It's not clear, right? So you need a tweeter, which will give you the high end. So the designers of the JL Audio speakers have this very clever solution. Instead of having separate tweeters, you can mount a tweeter coaxially onto the mid. So you get this very, very crisp, vibrant, beautiful sound coming out of these mids. And then there's also a little bit of a filter. It's called a high-pass filter that has been installed that only sends the mid and the high-range information to these speakers. They don't even try and drive the bass because these speakers will just sound muddy when they try to drive bass. So we have 4 of these speakers, and so there's 2 here, and then we have 1 here in the hallway, and then we have our final here in the bedroom. And I will flash up for our viewers a schematic of how the system was put together, and we'll give you all the part numbers of everything, and you too can make your Airstream into a Thumpstream. we're on the outside hatch here at the front of the Airstream, and Fred's going to do some camera trickery to show you. There is a wire that ran. They had to run it underneath the storage compartment. Again, it's out of the way and won't hook on anything. So I thought that was also a beautiful touch, running the wiring just where it's out of the way and nobody sees it.